Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. I want to talk a bit about the Filip Hrgovic Daniel Dubois fight because an awful lot of people that I know whose comments I've read online that have left comments on my videos, they're under the impression that Daniel Dubois won that fight with his head as much as his fists. Now, this is not going to be a video where I deny that Daniel Dubois was very funky with his head and that he was putting it in there and, being very, very free and easy with it. But I do think it's a mistake to say that he won the fight solely because of the headbutts or because of the use of the head. Look, by the end of the fight, Filip Hrgovic's face was chopped up meat, wasn't it? Let's be honest here. And there's no doubt that Daniel was going in with the head, putting it in there. Perhaps he'd been watching too many Evander Holyfield videos. But the flip side of that is that it wasn't like he was Fritzy Zivic or Sandy Sadler or one of the truly renowned dirty fighters who throughout their careers mastered the so-called dark arts and weren't afraid during any fight to use them. I thought Dubois won the fight and would have won the fight even if the referee had maybe even taken points off him for the head use. Now, the first cut that appeared over Hergovic's eye, was over the right eye, was supposedly caused by a punch. That's what the referee said. Got to be honest, I didn't see a punch doing that damage. I could be wrong. And I'm going by, I've watched it back once, the fight. During the fight, I was like, really? Was that a punch? But there again, I don't think I really saw a headbutt going in either. It was one of those cuts that initially I didn't think it was that bad a cut. In fact, it was bleeding quite profusely in the fourth round. But sometimes you get cuts that they seem to bleed quite a lot, but then they're not that deep. And then when you clean them up, they're manageable, if you know what I mean. Whereas a truly deep cut, you're going to struggle to close it and it will keep opening and so on. I don't really think a great deal of it. And then clearly by the end of the fight, I mean, the fight was, of course, stopped on cuts. You had the cut over the left eye. Was it on the eyelid? It was a completely unzipping of the eye. It was a really awful, awful cut. But again, I think that, Dubois, the head work was his head was careless, to put it mildly. But would I say that that won him the fight? No, I wouldn't, because let's talk a little bit about what Dubois did, apart from with his head. First of all, he came in apparently really, really confident, supremely confident. He'd been talking like a tough guy during the build-up. He had something to prove. I think Hergovich had rattled his cage, and he was a man on a mission. And he began very, very fast and very, very aggressively, banging that jab in. And I was quite impressed by that sort of proactive attitude that he had. But I do remember thinking, as early as the first round, defense is a bit slack. Now that brings us on to the second point, which is that Hergovich was very quickly able to measure his right hand, which he doesn't fire with a lot of disguise. He doesn't wind it up. He tends to sort of ping it very fast and with less. It's not like, well, I suppose I was going to compare it to Wilder's right hand. They're very different, of course, but there isn't a great deal of setting up of it. He'll jab and then ping the right hand over, and it's done very quickly and with very little back pull. And he was landing on Daniel, and Daniel showed a terrific chin. I mean, he landed 4 or 5, maybe half a dozen big right hands in the first few rounds against Daniel. They were flush punches. Daniel took them. So, again, just to recap as we go along, attitude, fast start from Daniel, good attitude from Daniel, fast start, good chin. Okay. The fourth thing I would mention is Hergovich's attitude going in. Now, he's always had this very sort of laid-back, almost languid attitude towards fighting. Certainly over the last few years, A lot of people have called it arrogance. Don Charles, who was in Daniel's corner, spoke about Hergovich's arrogance. And yeah, you do need a modicum of arrogance if you're going to be a fighter, if you're going to be a sportsman, or if you're going to succeed in life in general. You need to have a little bit of swagger about you. But absolute hubris is something quite different. And there's no doubt that Hergovich's arrogance, I think, played a part in his downfall, because he's the older man by 5 years. He spoke on more than one occasion about the sparring session they'd had when Daniel was, what was he, about 21, and Hergovich being in his mid-20s at the time, and how he got the better of Daniel, and Daniel was meant to do 4 sessions, and in fact he only did 2, and then he went home because he couldn't do any more. And well, sparring is sparring, especially if it's something like 5 years ago. And if Hergovich genuinely believed that sparring session would have a deep-rooted, everlasting impact on Daniel Dubois' psyche, then clearly he made a mistake, because it didn't appear to. In fact, those sort of things can work both ways. And as was the case with Daniel, he seemed to feel, well, I've got something to prove here. Yeah, you beat me up in sparring, so what? I've much, much improved. In fact, I've got something waiting for you here in my right hand and my jab. And the jab is something else I should have mentioned about Daniel. I mean, his jab is absolutely excellent. I've always thought it's underrated, but he showed a brilliant jab against Hergovich, and Hergovich himself has a very good jab. But what they say, jab with a jabber. And I thought Daniel did that very well. So I think the whole sparring session thing, the whole sparring story thing, was illustrative of Hergovich's arrogance and hubris. Another thing was that although Daniel started very quickly, Hergovich himself went with him. He went with that pace. He didn't try to slow Daniel down. He didn't try to, contain him. He decided, okay, I'll go with you. And he was firing a lot of punches himself, jabs, and obviously the right cross, as we've mentioned. And I don't think, I think it's difficult. If one guy has it in his head, I'm going to start quick and I'm going to do this whole 12 rounds at a breakneck pace, and the other guy is taken by surprise in that respect, it's very difficult for the latter to keep up the pace, because he hasn't mentally prepared himself, and to a lesser extent his body, and the two are obviously connected, for that fast pace. And I got the feeling that Hergovich was intent on getting rid of Daniel within 6. In fact, his words leading up to the fight indicate that he thought he was definitely going to get rid of Daniel early. He was asked, is this my toughest fight? Is this your toughest fight? He said no. Thought about it for a second. No. Again, swagger's one thing. Being too arrogant, pride goes before a fall, and all those other cliches. Definitely the case. So I think that when we talk about the victory for Daniel, yes, the head's going in. I mean, I don't see how you can look at that fight and say that the heads didn't have an effect on Hergovich. Clearly the head banging did. When Daniel was up close, he was moving forward with the head and rubbing the head in the cuts and all the rest of it. But that's the referee's job to sort them out. And I know I've read comments and heard people suggest, well, that was, bias, and the judges were paid off and all that. The judges weren't paid off. Nobody paid the fucking judges off, for Christ's sake. You could argue that the referee was too lenient. Yeah, you can make that perfect argument. But just because that's the case, it doesn't mean anyone's been paid off. Grow the fuck up. Stop watching bad B movies from the 1940s. It's not that far. There's no great conspiracy involved, all right? It might be that you could argue the referee was too lenient. You can argue that the referee was bad. You can argue that Dubois got away with way too much with the head. All of those are plausible, perfectly acceptable suggestions. They may all be true. But to say that Dubois won the fight just because of using his head, no, I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all, for the reasons that I've given. I think Dubois, in the end, wanted it more. I think he was tougher than Hergovich. Who would have thought that? You know, even 8, 9, 10 months ago, who would have thought that we'd be saying that about Daniel Dubois being tougher than Hergovich? I thought Hergovich didn't seem to have a plan B. Thought he took it way too easy. He was too laid back. It's really funny because when I saw Hergovich get into the ring, I thought, blimey, he's so laid back. He hasn't even bothered having his hair cut. He had that air about him. Oh, I've got to turn up and I'll win. I'm better than this guy. I've got more skills. I'm older than him. I'm more experienced. I got the better of him in sparring. Yeah, no problem. Failure to prepare is preparation to fail, as the old cliche goes. And it's true. It's true. So those are my opinions. Leave yours below. You may disagree with me. You may agree with me. You may half agree with me or half disagree with me. You know, life's like that. Comments below, and if you're new to the channel, of course, and you could subscribe, that would be a big help to us because we like subscribers because they build the channel up and spread the word about Joe's Son of Boxing. And the little, like button thing, give that a little tap as well if you don't mind. I'm looking forward to reading what you've got to say. See if you agree with me or disagree, and I'll answer as many of your comments as I possibly can. Thank you as always for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day, and bye for now.